JOYCE questions Daniel Dubois title shot. Must be something going on. Now, 2 years ago, we saw JOYCE give Daniel a beating. The experience, the resilience was a little too much for Daniel on the night. Now, JOYCE was at the Fury Derek Chisora fight, and he saw Daniel fighting Kevin Lorena on the undercard. It ended in a third round knockout for Daniel. And, you know, he said about Daniel, he hasn't got the experience. And now all of a sudden he's got the WBA regular, but he hasn't picked up that experience. He's boxing outside. He probably hasn't warmed up properly, and he's done his knee, and he looked terrible. JOYCE said he was at the top of the stadium, went to go and get something to eat and drink. We had to rush back. I thought, oh my God, he's got up chin. 3 counts in the first round. What's going on? It would have been embarrassing if he got knocked out by him. And he's still getting a shot at Usyk. Must be something going on. Now, Daniel, Usyk's not going to fight him. But the bigger point is how Daniel has probably as much chance getting a title shot as Joe does. And when Joe says something's going on here, this is something he needs to take up with Frank Warren. What's going on? Why does it seem you're pushing just as hard for Daniel to get a shot as you are me? And I'm your leading contender. Demetrius Andrade dismisses JANIBEK. This guy cannot carry my bags to the gym. That's the headline of Boxing Scene. In the article, he said he should have been given a showdown against someone who brought more monetary value to the table. Let me stop it for a minute and ad-lib. You don't get what you ask for necessarily. You get what you negotiate and what you can attract. He said the fight wasn't worth anything to him. When he was asked why he bypassed the JANIBEK bout, he said, me and Triple G are in the same lane, the same generation. That's what we should be clapping for, not JANIBEK. Now, he's opted to fight on Tank Davis's undercard against Hector Garcia at 168 against a no-name who isn't as well known as JANIBEK. And if it was just JANIBEK we were dealing with, then I wouldn't be so critical on Demetrius. He also messed up the Zach Parker back. Said he was injured. There's a lot of skeptics who are not sure if he was injured when he went to revisit the fight with a second purse bid where Matchroom weren't making a pitch, left it a sitting target, basically, for Frank Warren to manipulate, and he didn't take the fight. And I don't know. And like, he watched Alim Kanolai. He watched his performance against Denzel Bentley, and he's concluding that Alim Kanolai is not on his level. This guy can't carry my bags. I'm not wasting my time. Well, I don't know how you can wait for Denzel to make JANIBEK not look like the boogeyman he's supposed to be and then conclude all that. You're supposed to beat the guy, then tell us he's not on your level. You don't wait for someone else to make him look relatively ordinary then say that. It's almost like you're taking Denzel's performance to say, yo, look, he's nothing. Must be a very frustrating year for him. Very frustrating. Started this year as a world champion. Starts next year with no belts. Didn't lose no belts in the ring. Hasn't fought for the whole year. And at 34 years of age, you can only hope he takes more of a practical approach to what fights he thinks he deserves. What about Choi getting put in recess?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That was the best news. She was becoming really annoying.
Defo.
She had no intention to fight Baumgartner. None at all. Didn't want to fight Mayor, so put her in recess. Put her in recess. Kelvin is saying Baumgartner versus Pursoon for undisputed.
Yeah, because it's either going to be Ramona Grafe or Delphine Pursoon. They're the number 1 and 2 in the WBA rankings, but Ramona Grafe is the WBA gold champion, so she's got more of a right to get that fight. So it's the only way Pursoon can get it is if Grafe agrees not to take it, because she's number 1.
Okay. Right. So, how good is that girl you just mentioned? What did you say her name was?
Oh, Ramona Grafe.
Yeah, how good is she?
I've only seen one of her fights. You'd have to ask Julius about her. I know he knows her a bit better, but like from what I saw, she's tidy. She's a like a good talent, but with 4 fights, I don't know if she's got the right kind of seasoning for that just yet. But she's talented. She's probably slightly advanced for the amount of fights she's got, but she may not be like I wouldn't put her in the category of like an Ellie Scott who's 6-0 but is already European champion and that.
Ellie Scotty's good, man. Ellie
Yeah.
Scott. I'm watching her. Like, she's good. She is good. So could Baumgardner handle that pursuing pressure?
She could do, because she's, again, if we're talking stylistically, like Alicia's not a pure boxer by trade. She's got all the pure boxing skills, but she's definitely that boxer puncher. She'll throw hands, so she's good both offense and defense. So she'll be able to nullify certain parts of the pressure, and then because she probably hits a lot harder than maybe like Katie and some of the other girls that Pursuit's been in with, she won't just be trying to steam forward. She'll be a bit more cautious of the shots coming back. So while it won't stop her pressure at all, or it won't stop a lot of the pressure, like it may slow it down enough for Alicia to be able to pick better shots and, just control rounds a bit more. Because being with Tony Harrison especially, she'll get some of that pure boxer science from him, and distance control and how to offset the aggression and whatnot. So yeah, I think she could handle it, but it definitely won't be an easy fight.
I don't think she'll ever give anyone an easy fight, man.
No, she's one of those ones that's certified win, lose or draw. You know that, like, if your heart ain't in, don't bother take the fight.
Yeah. You got to come prepared for anything with her, man. She's bringing it, Pursuit. Pursuit is bringing it. The issue with having 4 belt undisputed champions is you get in a situation like Charlo, break your hand, he broke his left hand. The hand will remain in a cast for 2 months. Then it's rehabilitation. The mandatory defense against TSZYU was scheduled for January the 28th, just a few weeks away. A WBO mandatory. The reschedule will be when? February? No. March, April, May, June. By which time, I'm sure there'll be other mandatory obligations from the IBF, the WBC, WBA. The WBO may give him an exemption. The other sanctioning bodies may consider the injury and give him more time. But more than likely, he's going to get stripped of a belt or 2. Perhaps 3 of them and be left with 1, like Josh Taylor. The injury occurred in sparring. There is currently no new date for the rescheduled fight. A new date will be announced soon. What does TSZYU do? Does he wait for Charlo to get fit? That could be spring next year. The break looks bad. Let's look at the details. Broke his left hand in 2 places between the pinky and ring finger and at the base of the thumb after landing a punch in sparring at his gym in Houston on Tuesday. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to heal up and be ready to be used in a title fight. TSZYU has only fought once this year, and that's a whole training camp he's dedicated to fighting. What does he do? Take a tune-up or wait patiently? Charlo himself has fought once this year. That was the rematch with Brian Castano, who he made easy work of this time around to unify all the belts. When you look at the PBC thing right now, it's a little scary. The last time Charlo fought twice in a year was 2019. Zhu, at 28 years of age, I believe needs to take another fight. He's less experienced than Charlo. Another fight to sharpen up his skills would be excellent. I know people are going to say, well, it's too risky, Beats. It's too risky. Well, you're saying it's too risky. But what is the point challenging a good undisputed champion? And he is a good fighter. And your skills are dulled because of match practice. You've as good as lost the fight because you being less experienced need the experience. People seem to want to brush over important elements of boxing. You need to be match fit, sharp. You need to get your rounds up to build up that mental stamina and confidence. I'm not telling them to go and fight no killer, but they have to find a happy medium and keep Tim sharp if he's to have a realistic chance of beating Jamel. If I've said Jamal earlier, I apologize, Jamel. Tim can't afford to pick up bad habits right now. Tim fought 3 times in 2021. He fought twice in 2020. He fought 4 times in 2019. 4 times 2018. He's used to being active. Why change now? Why change now? The only reason he's been inactive is because they're trying to protect him to make sure he gets to the ring unscathed to collect the purse and everyone else can get what they're due to get paid. But this way of thinking in boxing is not good. It's really not good. It might seem, yeah, well, we just got to preserve what we have beats. We can't take chances. Okay, you put him in there with the more experienced Charlo. I believe more experienced fighters can deal with ring rust better than inexperienced fighters. Older fighters need to train less anyway, and they need to fight less because it's less damage, less wear and tear. They can use their mind to compensate for a lot of stuff they can't do physically. Younger fighters can't do that. So Tim has been active on his come up for a reason, because they're getting a momentum going. Now he loses that momentum, goes into a fight with Charlo and takes an absolute shellacking. Well, how long is it going to take TSZYU to repair him after he takes a shellacking? Who knows? He might never come back again. You've got to treat young fighters like young fighters and keep them active. They've got to be active. That's how they beat the crap out of the older fighters. Don't turn the younger fighter into an old fighter. Yeah, let's just sit it out. Young fighters are more instinctive than older fighters. Yeah? They'll just go out there and whoop people on the strength of, I'm just going to whoop people because I can. When you leave these young guys to sit around, like Ryan Garcia calling off his tune-up. You see how Oscar De La Hoya is concerned? There's a reason. This man is a multiple weight world champion, and he was very good. There's a reason they're so concerned. But they know they can't go at Ryan really hard because Ryan will throw a hissy and threaten to leave and not fight or something crazy. So they can't even tell him none. Pulling for Anthony Yard to win this month, but he's another concern. He had one easy blowout for the year, and he's up against a hard-punching, experienced, unified, professional champion with a thorough amateur resume as well, Eastern Bloc trained. And I can't lie, it's a bit of a concern. It is a bit of a concern. Joe Smith was around 27 when he knocked out Bernard Hopkins, who was around 51 or whatever, in December 2016. Hopkins was inactive for 2 years after he lost to Sergei Kovalev for 2 years. He fought twice in 2014, then fought Joe Smith in 2016. Joe Smith was active, fought 4 times in 2014, 3 times in 2015, 3 times in 2016, including the knockout of Bernard Hopkins. And let me tell you this now. Joe Smith Jr. could box for 1,000 years and not have the natural talent of a Bernard Hopkins. But that activity, his youth, was more than enough to bridge the gap and retire Bernard Hopkins. If young fighters are not using their youth to their advantage, which is staying active, go look at Mike Tyson's record from when he turned pro, from 1985 till he got his title shot in 1986 against Trevor Berbick. Yeah? And they kept Mike busy because Mike would more than likely get in serious trouble going back to Brownsville or wherever he was hanging out in New York. And they kept Mike busy because Mike was just like hyperactive. They could do this with Mike. And this might be an extreme case, but it's still relevant. 1985, Mike turns pro. Mike fights 14 times in 1985. 14. Turned pro at 19 years of age. So he turns pro in March 1985 and fights 14 times. He fights Trevor Berbick in 1986, the next year after turning pro. This is his second year as a pro. In the second year, he fought 13 times. 27 times in 2 years. In his 13th fight of 1986, he won the WBC title. That record's not going to be beaten. Not in my lifetime. I just don't see it being beaten. It's less than 2 years a pro. Not a heavyweight. In other weight classes, maybe, but not a heavy. I just don't see it. Now, I'm not really concerned with people who want to take shots at Mike's resume or his skill. I just don't even listen. I just tune out. It's not worth it. Not worth the time, right? That Mike Tyson, who beat Trevor Berbick, is an almost unbeatable heavyweight.
Mike Tyson. On November 22, 1986, 20-year-old Mike Tyson knocks out 33-year-old Trevor Berbick in just 5 minutes and 35 seconds to become the youngest title holder ever.
In 1986, 2 fights in, he signs a deal with ESPN. He debuts against Jesse Ferguson at ESPN. Took him 6 rounds. He had 2 10-rounders that year that went the full 10, Tillis and Mitch Green. He took on the tall Cuban Rebalta, who took him into the 10th and was stopped in the 10th, right? They gave Mike October off. He got October off, and he had to beat Alonzo Ratliff to qualify for the unification tournament. Ratliff was a former cruiserweight champion. Mike dusted him off in 2. And then he went into the Berbick fight, the 13th fight of the year, and knocked him out in 2. Youngest heavyweight champion ever. The Ali era is a little vague for me. You know, I was around, but I was very young. I wasn't really into boxing like that. But everyone knew Ali. He was extremely popular, and like the notoriety is well deserved. But Mike Tyson, for someone my age, has to be the most symbolic fighter of this generation. And it can't be argued. Like, people who argue it are dumb. Trying to sound more intellectual than you are. Trying to intellectualize, well, I know this and I know. Okay. Mike Tyson became infamous before a lot of people around the world saw him throw a punch. The first time I saw Mike was on ITV against Mitch Bloodgreen. But I had read about him in the newspapers and the magazines, more importantly. And because he was fighting so regular, there was always a fight report about Mike Tyson knocking someone out. Breath of fresh air. And before you try and compare it to Deontay Wilder fighting a lot of times before he got a belt, a WBC belt as well, just like Mike. Rebalta, Ferguson, Tillis, and Mitch Green were all way more solid opponents than some of the characters Wilder was knocking out in Alabama or wherever he was doing in the South back when. It's not comparable. Tyson's fighting them names in the second year as a pro. Like, take what I say here as a pinch of salt, because you got to deal with the red tape, the bureaucracy, the administration work that it takes to put a card together these days. Fighter insurance and health and safety is a totally different ball game. But withstanding that, the young fighters coming up should be fighting 5 times a year at the least. If Tyson can do 14 or 13, and bear in mind, fighters were a lot more active then, generally. At least 5 times a year. You know, you could hear Oscar was exasperated when Ryan announced he wasn't going to take a tune-up. He just couldn't believe it, because it makes no sense. But there are no Cus D'Amatos no more. No more Slim Robinsons, Eddie Futches, when coaches were coaches and not glorified padmen. Who was Broner's trainer against Stafford? Like, Broner was shouting instructions at Stafford in the corner. Like, you just didn't get that back then, you know. George Benton weren't going to have that, was he? You're going to shout at George Benton? No. You listen to George. You listen to Eddie. Funny thing is Dan Goosen is old school, but he's okay with Ryan not taking this tune-up. It's crazy. Now, Charlo hasn't fought this year. Neither is his brother. A lot of people are skeptical whether the hand injury is real. I'll comment no further because I don't know. Fred from Barbershop Conversation is theorizing the hand isn't injured. He'd need to see proof. He's saying the budget isn't there to put on a fight like that. Pay the purses to an undisputed champion. The Boxing Voice was asking a few days back, did the PBC miss a trick not holding that fight in Australia, being that TSZYU is the son of an Australian legend, and we know that Australian boxing is on the rise. You bring Jamal Charlo out there defending his undisputed titles. It's a stadium fight against TSZYU. Broner's gone. They're not sure if Andy Ruiz or Deontay Wilder is a financially viable fight from what I'm hearing. But, you know, speculation is all and good. I have to give him the benefit of the doubt the hand is broken. But, you know, I'm a little skeptical.